Hello, my monstrosities. Hello once again. Today I bring to you a bit of my absurd thought process. Now, before we get further into the video, I want to tell you now, I don't think that this entirely could be the case. But the thing that I want to talk about is worth, at least in my head, uh, thinking about and maybe experimenting with. As people have been making progress, figuring out builds for Assimilation Swarm, and even Warrior Bioform Onslaught, I've come back to thinking about Vanguard Onslaught. Why are all of those related? So, I think there's a slight chance we might have been wrong about Vanguard Onslaught. And I don't mean that in the sense of uh, anybody thinking that it's good, it's actually bad, or anybody that thinks that it's okay, it's bad, or great. Any of that. No. I think we might be doing, there's a chance, just a chance, uh, that maybe we got the build thing wrong. Maybe we've been building the list wrong for a while. Um, and even more so to the point, like, why would I say that? Because one thing that I gotta admit frustrates me is the rhetoric with Vanguard Onslaught. It's like, oh, it's the second best tier in the detachment. Oh my gosh, it'll do the thing. It'll win you games. But yet it keeps proving that that's not the case. Now, mind you, some weekends and some months it has a good win rate, and then for a lot of the time, it it gets you find out the issues with it. You're asking Vanguard, or we've been asking Vanguard Invader units to do damage and score points. Um, and that brings me to, well, how could we make Vanguard Onslaught better? What we saw was, for a bit there, the development with Vanguard Onslaught was that, well, I'm not going to act like I can do much damage with the Vanguard Invader units. It's nice that they have advance in charge, but I'm still bringing two Exocrines, right? We're still doing that. The Think Tank, Neurotyrant, and Zoe's has been like making a really a good home in Vanguard Onslaught because there's access to it. So going back to talking about these, what do I mean? So Assimilation Swarm is asking you to bring harvesters. But naturally, I think anybody could look at this list, see that there's only 5 units, and go, well, I can't really make 2,000 points with that. Because it's not really asking you to. It is saying that harvesters that you bring get a buff. And now, you probably could make 2,000 points with this. 3 Norn Assimilators, 3 Harspecs, 3 Psychophages, uh, 3 units of Max Pyrovores. Like, you probably could reach 1,000 points, or 2,000 points, I think. Um, but to that point, I don't think there's any way in hell you make 3,000, right? So there's they do have 3,000 point games, so I don't think that it's possible to do that with this amount of harvesters. And you're not asked to. Even though everything in here, a good portion of things in here says harvester, 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 buy now. Um, enhancements doesn't really do it compared to those, but come down to the stratagems, harvester, 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 and then two Tyranid units. So Assimilation Swarm, you were never expected to just make a list out of only harvesters. Going to Warrior Battle Onslaught, I know I definitely had the same, or pushed the, this is asking you to take a battle line worth of warriors in your list. And the first few builds that we saw progress with came to the conclusion that I kind of came with. I'm like, warriors just aren't worth it for most intensive purposes. But these two strats that affect one Tyranid unit instead of warrior, 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 um, if you can kind of build around that, that's good. So we saw Exocrines, Malice after Tyran effects to put their strength of their ranged up by 2. Make another breakpoint. Um, and On this end, re-rolling wound rolls of 1 after you bring in exocrines and ranged. Guess what? Reroll hit rolls of 1, reroll wound rolls of 1. So we've seen that kind of develop, and now, even further, we've seen kind of that again, but not in the same capacity. It's been a bit more of still bringing things that will bolster the warriors, but at the same time still do with your army. So Maliceptors, Psychophages. I don't think we've seen Venomthropes lately. I could be wrong. I just don't remember seeing that on the list. But other things that you were bringing anyway. Steel lictors, you're still making your list and replacing one or two components, and that's the other thing that I have just a general issue with a bit of how the Tyranid Codex is perceived by kind of everybody, but not everybody at the same time. A lot of people, I should say, perceived by a lot of people. It's like, look, you can do everything with the Codex, and our skeleton is still, well, if I just add two exocrines and two Tyrannifexes and then change this, and this, and add two lictors and bring a Hive Tyrant, is that I can do everything, or is it I'm bringing the same list and changing two things here and there? Like, is that really what it is, or no? So that's the one thing that Warrior Bioform Onslaught is starting to look a little bit alike. But I admit at the same time, from some of the list too, it's not entirely that. There's maybe no extra cringe, but just Maliceptors in their place because you still need to do the do, and they have aura of -1 to hit. So Warrior Bioform Onslaught is working through the kinks, and I say all this to say that uh, the list that I've seen so far lately are not doubling down on battle line worth of warriors. Um, they're doing, you know, maybe battle lines worth in total of warriors, things that have warriors on the name, right? 4 units of things that have warriors, which is more than you would bring in other things. But it's to say there's hybrid to this. So you're not building the same way you weren't building only harvesters, not building only warriors, and that makes me think: Is it possible? Is it possible that we shouldn't have been bringing only Vanguard invaders in our list, or like 90% Vanguard invaders? The Hormagon squad or two, and the think tank, yeah. Sure, why not? The Hormagons already have advanced in charge, so giving them fallback in charge is another thing. Um, and being able to uppy downy the think tank is pretty good, especially when there's a lot of battle shock, hopefully, happening in Vanguard Onslaught. So maybe this was supposed to be the same hybrid, or maybe it's supposed to be the same hybrid as a lot of the other things. And I think another clue is that Vanguard Onslaught is one of the few detachments that gives all of your things a buff one way or another. Invasion Fleet has access to it, Synaptic Nexus does. We'll talk about that in a second. Um, and Vanguard Onslaught says, hey, no matter what Tyranid unit you are, you can fall back and charge, which is pretty good. So that means even, outside of a Brewlord Gene Stealer brick, that means that old One Eye can fall back and charge. Um, that means that a Toxicrene, just because I saw it first, can fall back and charge. Like, things like that. It means anything with this keyword hell, uh, Hierophant uh, can fall back and charge in Vanguard Onslaught. And that the Vanguard Invader units have the access to advance and charge. And again, looking over this, I've made this kind of a talking point in the video, where if you look at the list of the Vanguard Invaders, there's not many of them that you actually want to advance and charge. They're more utility pieces than anything, but that's not to say that you shouldn't still consider Von Ryan's Leapers, Raveners, Gene Stealers, and Warriors, I guess, attached to Tyranid Prime, as people done, uh, for when you do want to do something, but you're not advancing and charging your Neurolictor, probably not your Lictors if we're being honest. Parasite of Mortrex, Gargoyles have advanced shoot, and they can have advanced shoot and charge in this, so, um, because they have assault weapons. But, they also have a deep strike scoop situation, so there's a lot to unpack there. Maybe if this means that we should have been transforming the gargoyles further. You're also not doing this with a Tyrannocyte, really. Advancing and charging, even though I've talked about that's funny because it has the same base as a Norn. So that's a good roadblock for 105 points, but I don't know if that's all I need. But say all that to say, your Harpy Hive Crone, if you bring those, uh, isn't doing that. So maybe uh, there's a slight chance that our build should have been half or even less. Maybe a harvester's amount of Vanguard invaders, and the rest of the list is the same skeleton. We've been looking at Crusher Stampede, where it tells you bring monsters, and even then, people are doing roughly the same skeleton, where it's two lictors, Biovore, uh, whatever other little shit, some squad of Raveners, and then fill in the rest with Norn emissaries and the things you're already bringing. Exocrines, maybe Maliceptors, maybe Tyrannifexes, whatever you're feeling that day, right? So maybe Vanguard Onslaught could benefit a little bit from that situation as well. Uh, maybe, right? This is just maybe. I don't want anybody to get in here and be like, man, this guy told me I should run less Vanguard Invaders and Vanguard Onslaught. Can you believe that? I'm not saying that you should. I'm saying there's a possibility, and maybe that explains the inconsistency with the win rates for this detachment. When people go, this is the best thing, and then it just doesn't reflect that out of our detachments. And like going down, it follows the same pattern as kind of the other ones. Vanguard Invader, Vanguard Invader, Vanguard Invader, Vanguard Invader. Mind you, it says Vanguard Invader 2 on these two, but it also says Tyranids Infantry Unit, Tyranids Infantry. So maybe we should have been bringing Tyranid infantry that isn't Vanguard Invader. Like maybe we should have been putting the Tyrant Guard bricks over here. I don't think so. Just saying, there's a slight chance. Maybe that's the possibility. We've seen Barb Gaunts be explored over here. Um, and for decent enough reason. Like they slow your opponent down. They're supposed to be kind of anti-infantry themselves, and if you can reposition them with a reactive move or just pull them off the board and do it somewhere else, we've seen that too. Venom Thropes, I've talked about how, well, if you're going to make a list with Broodlord Gene Stealers and Winged Tyranid Prime and Tyranid Warriors, that's a lot of infantry. Venom Thropes can probably extend to that. Maybe put them in here too. So, it's just saying Pyrovores. Hell, maybe there's room for Pyrovores to be explored over here as well compared to just our little 40-point action doer. I don't know. I don't know. I think there's possibly more play on that one, especially now that the Zoe's going to test the Neurotyran. We've definitely been keeping on with that. I think there was a chance that you just brought both of them, like, again, before they could attach, but we didn't really get very far on this aspect. So, and to continue the point of how the Codex kind of was designed, Unending Swarm, there was no way that you were just going to bring only Endless Multitude units. That was never going to happen, and that didn't happen. You still brought a Hive Tyrant, you still brought Turvy to support the Termagants. You were never going to do that, but yet you look at the stratagems and it says Endless Multitude. Like this one is even less forgiving than the other three. It doesn't say anything like, hey, you can still benefit from it stratagem wise, but uh, you need characters, right? You need at least one character to make a warlord. The enhancements, technically, you can make two endless multitude units, have enhancements with gargoyles attaching to the Winged Tyranid Prime and Neurogons attaching to the Neuro Tyrant, but is that the best way to add two to the move characteristic? I know, you tell me. Now I have 7-inch moving Zoes if I attach this to a Neurotyrant and Zoes, and the Zoes that were brought because they have a 6-inch range of give a 6 up invulnerable save, so that it'll keep your Endless Multitude around a little bit longer, right? We've done that, but do I really need additional 2 inches of movement on the gargoyles? Probably not. Or do I need it on the Neurogons? Probably definitely not, right? So things like that. Unending Swarm, and however you feel about it currently now, um, this isn't an Unending Swarm video, so I'll stop about there. But, you know, at its first design, that it did follow kind of the same play pattern. And Synaptic Nexus to an extent too. It wasn't it didn't expect you to only bring Synapse, even though three of the enhancements say Synapse model only, and this one that says Psyker model only can only apply to one specific character, which is the Neurotyrant. So again, Synapse, the enhancements say Synapse. This says within Synapse range, but then you find out none of your Synapse creatures, except for the warriors, melee warriors at that, really would care about half of this shit. 5 up invulnerable save, +1 to advance and charge, +1 to hit, right? You tell me another Synapse that really would like that. Um, yeah, I'm not seeing it, Chief. I guess no, I was going to say Parasite of Mortrix, but even not there either. So, it wasn't okay. Technically, Turvy, sure. Uh, there, but looking down, Synapse, 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 Synapse. Well, one unit. No, yeah, Synapse, Synapse, Synapse. Cool. But then you have two that is just like Tyranids unit in Synapse range and Tyranids unit within Synapse range. So they kind of followed a scheme here, and you weren't supposed to be loading this with only Synapse. Um, take your Maliceptors, take your Norn Emissaries, maybe your Think Tank as well, but then still fill it with some Hormigons and uh, people tried Haruspex for a bit. Screamer Killers, I think, are pretty good in here still. We've seen Tyrant Guard in here as well. So, it wasn't. And now, admittedly, the Tyrant Guard can attach to a Synapse unit, but they still get the benefits. And so that's where things like Reinforced Hyvno comes in. But, we saw Molochs in here. Uh, so it was never just bring Synapse. So I think there's a slight chance that in order to revisit, and yeah, I did exclude Crusher Stampede because I don't think you, I don't think the same thing is said needs to be said on this one because we've seen only Monster Crusher Stampede lists do fairly well, but people still want their Biovores and Lictors, and hey, do you? So I guess if you want to add the same argument that you're not bringing just monsters in Crusher Stampede from a competitive standpoint, I guess you still can. Uh, you still can, but I guess I'll throw that in here too. So maybe an invasion fleet is generic. It's supposed to let you have everybody. So coming back to, well, I guess I didn't need to do that one because I have this open here. Put that back to you and come back here. Maybe Vanguard Onslaught. Uh, maybe we've been too hard on the Vanguard invaders. Maybe we've been like doubling down on them a little bit too hard. Looking at something like Final Day from GSC, it's supposed to be a combination of Vanguard Invader and GSC units. Now, I think there's the chance that has, well, there's not even a chance, there's a guarantee that had more support for that style of it, whereas like no, if you put your Vanguard invaders up, it'll trigger something for your GSC and kind of vice versa in extent some way somehow, where this one doesn't necessarily say, hey, if you bring Vanguard invader units, they'll buff your other units, they'll heal them. Like, it doesn't say that. It doesn't say, hey, if you make a list around your Vanguard invaders but bring other shit, they'll be your tanks, right? Like, it doesn't say, or the goal is to be tanks. It's still a fucking 5-up invuln, right? But like, it doesn't say, hey, they get better survivability while the rest of your shit probably has an invuln too, right? And I have another thing about War Battlefront Onslaught. I'm debating making this video, where I wonder if GW is just making detachments that are, instead of fixing some of the data sheets, they are just making the detachments the fixes. You look at Experimental Prototype, Warrior Bioform, and a couple others, but that's not for here. But they say, hey, instead of fixing the warrior sheet, we're going to make it so that they are a little bit more survivable, to frustrate your opponent a little bit more, give them some battle line, more OC, right? Give them troop essentially all over again. Um, and then you bring other shit because they're troops, and then it tells you like, hey, bring Hormagaunts and Termagants, like get active. But we didn't really write that way to be pretty good on that one. But hey, so maybe there's a chance that Vanguard Onslaught, you look at it and even think about what Vanguard invaders you would actually want um, to do whatever. Maybe because I've said that Vanguard Onslaught is definitely propped up by 30 Brood Lord. Sorry, 30 Gene Stealers, 3 Brood Lords. Like, it's definitely propped up by that, in my opinion. I mean, hell, if you stop at 2, right? But maybe you stop at 2. Maybe instead of making the rest of the list, um, fucking warriors with prime that I've been asking people to stop doing for a while. But jokes aside, or truth, honest opinion aside, I guess. Maybe you truly do stop that and replace that with something kind of better than the Warriors. Maybe you do keep one. I've seen the Vanguard Onslaught list lately. Have kind of been like, all right, I see what he meant. We can't do 3 of these things. Maybe we do just 1, right? So I've seen them take it down to 1. Uh, and I still would say you bring Von Ryan's Leapers, right? Because, or, even go into that aspect. Back to transforming the gargoyles. Maybe we had all the units wrong, right? Maybe, yeah, the ones that can be forward in some instance or in a funky position, maybe those are the ones we focus on making advance and charge, while the rest of our units have access to fallback and charge. Because one of my big gripes is that our Tyranid shooting, all of it's fucking blast, right? So if it's all blast, people touch things and you can't shoot anymore. But if you can fall back and charge, guess what? You can fall back, shoot something, and then charge. So maybe that was the entire purpose the entire time. Maybe you were supposed to only bring Von Ryan's Leapers, Broodlord Gene Stealers, Gargoyles, and then fill the list with our other shit. Exocringe, Maleceptors. And that way, your brick of Von Ryan's Leapers that infiltrated, that have fights first, stealth, and then invuln, can get up there, get in the mix. Maybe, if it's a character unit, precision it out with Assassin Beast, or just, try to get some more damage through, right? Um, or vice versa, right? To say the same, like that's assuming that you didn't shoot or whatever, right? Or clean up crew, because charging is after shooting, but, maybe that's how all of this was supposed to go. Maybe we weren't supposed to sit there and go, well, if on top of that, because I have this one keyword on the Wing Tiered Prime, make it Warriors, and then because I have fucking how many points? It's like, what, 230? So because I already have 690 points of Broodlord Gene Stealers in my list, I might as well continue to Vanguard. Like, maybe we weren't supposed to do that. Maybe our scout unit now has advance and charge. Go for it. Maybe our infiltrators that can actually block somebody up, do it. Maybe our gargoyles that can now turn 1 deep strike with seated broods, shoot and scoot. And if it's not that, advance shoot and charge, because they are Vanguard invaders and they have assault weapons. Maybe that's what we're supposed to do and use them literally as more utility than what we've been doing. Take a Neurolictor, 2 if you're feeling froggy, right? Trigger some Battle Shock, because it's easier to do that in this detachment with between Surprise Assault, right? Maybe, shooting phase ones, it's kind of hard, but, Trigon technically does have a ranged weapon. Raveners do have a ranged weapon. Uh, Maybe you're supposed to trigger that around some Neurolictors on top of hunting grounds if people came in. Neural node redeploying you for some other shit to put your Death Leaper or Neurolictor in better positions to get all of this started. All of these things. We've seen Screamer Killers come into here because, of course, if I'm doing Battle Shock, I might as well try to do Battle Shock, right? Maybe there's a chance that, and hell, the Screamer Killer has a blast weapon. So maybe there's a chance that a lot of it was not for us to make the entire list. How many Vanguard invaders can I fit in 2,000 points? So that's just food for thought. I just think there's a chance that maybe the inconsistency of it, where it's like, yeah, like I'll be honest, I've said that, yeah, it scores points. It's a good detachment, but because it's focused on scoring points, and your opponent also wants to score points, it's not necessarily the edge case. But if you change it to be kind of what's going on with, uh, I guess, World Eaters or Orcs, where they're melee based, but GW has given a bit more tools to still do the shooting something in some way, shape, or another, right? Um, Maybe that's what we're supposed to be. Where you look at our stuff, well, we aren't the meleeist of armies, so our Vanguard invaders, asking them to actually kill some shit was kind of a tough call. But if I'm asking them to block up things and then fall back, um, so I can shoot them, maybe that's what it's supposed to be this entire time. So yeah, that's just my working thing. Again, all grain of salt. Okay, this is just a thought. Maybe that will get us Vanguard Invader Onslaught wins out the wazoo if we do the skeleton of two Exocrines, a Tyranifax, whatever have you, um, and just choose our Vanguard Invaders better. Maybe. Just food for thought. Biomass for the hive mind to ponder. Um, Not saying that you go out and do this, but if you want, maybe tell me how it goes. So, yep. If you like the video, like it. Got a comment for me, comment. And until next time, peace out, my monstrosities.